Empress Aeloria Voss stood upon the elevated dais in the vast council chamber of the Elysian Dominion. Her iridescent skin locked in a carefully neutral silver glow beneath the soft illumination from floating crystal orbs. Her formal attire, crafted from shimmering fabrics that caught every ray of light, accentuated her tall, graceful form and the subtle ear structures that crowned her head with elegant curves. This ceremony marked her 47th suitor in 6 years, a number she tracked with a mixture of wry amusement and profound fatigue. The constant parade of eligible nobles had become a suffocating routine, each one presented as the ideal match for strengthening alliances and ensuring the Dominion's future. Yet for Aeloria, they represented nothing more than calculations on a political ledger, leaving her feeling unseen and unfulfilled. She had always been taught that royal bonds were about duty and stability, but years of these presentations had left her questioning if there could be more to life than strategic partnerships in a society that had long suppressed raw emotion to maintain perfect harmony. Lord Varin, a respected commander from a prominent house, stood before her in his finest uniform, his light patterns displaying bold emerald tones of carefully controlled confidence. He delivered his proposal with smooth eloquence, outlining how their union would fortify military ties, produce capable heirs, and support her eventual rule with steadfast partnership. The council members, arrayed in rows by rank with their own auras subtly pulsing in measured interest, hung on every word. Many likely speculated privately on whether this time the Empress would finally accept. Aeloria listened with the composed demeanor she had honed through countless similar events. Her ear structures remained in the position of polite attention, and her skin patterns stayed rigidly controlled to reveal no hint of her true emotions. Inside, however, a deep weariness settled over her, born from years of being viewed solely as a tool for power rather than a person with her own desires and dreams. She longed for a connection that felt personal, where someone might appreciate her love for ancient star charts or her quiet moments of contemplation in the gardens, feelings her people had trained themselves to mute for generations. As Lord Varin concluded and gazed upward, with a blend of assurance and nervousness, an advisor softly interjected, "Your Majesty, perhaps granting this proposal additional time for consideration would be prudent, given the effort invested." The suggestion carried an undercurrent of gentle rebuke, highlighting how her repeated refusals were starting to concern the court and her family regarding her commitment to tradition. Aeloria responded with practiced diplomacy. "Lord Varin, your offer honors the Dominion greatly. Your service and heritage are worthy of admiration. Nevertheless, I need more time to ponder such a profound commitment. Please accept my thanks for your interest." The rejection was delivered smoothly, and Lord Varin's patterns shifted to a muted shade as he bowed formally and withdrew. A buzz of whispered conversations filled the hall, debating her seemingly unattainable expectations in a culture that prized emotional restraint above all. In the private family chambers afterward, Aeloria faced her parents with a heavy heart. Her father, the retired emperor, struggled to contain his disappointment as he spoke. "Aeloria, this situation cannot endure forever. Your position demands that you form bonds to secure the succession and political stability." His ear structures tilted back in mild disapproval. "I fully comprehend my obligations," she answered respectfully but firmly, her skin tones remaining even. "But I long for a bond that transcends mere advantage, one where I am valued for who I am." Her mother was more direct, her patterns showing frustration. "These suitors are exceptional in every conventional sense. What is it you seek that they fail to provide?" Aeloria paused, searching for words to express the intangible. "I desire to be seen truly, as an individual with thoughts and feelings, not simply as the Empress or a strategic asset. Every proposal focuses on duty and lineage, never on genuine connection, the kind our people have learned to suppress." The conversation concluded with her father imposing restrictions to the palace grounds until she demonstrated a more mature perspective on her responsibilities. Returning to her private quarters, Aeloria felt increasingly confined and restless, questioning if she would ever escape the cycle of unfulfilling prospects in a society afraid of uncontrolled emotion. Meanwhile, far across the stars, Ambassador Julian Reyes stood aboard a transport vessel, gazing at the approaching Elysian homeworld with a combination of anticipation and apprehension. As humanity's chosen representative for establishing relations with the advanced Elysian Dominion, he had spent months studying their intricate customs, hierarchical structures, and non-verbal communication through light patterns and ear positions. Though prepared intellectually, he felt the weight of representing his species to a civilization far older and more sophisticated, one that viewed humanity's open emotional expressiveness as both primitive and strangely compelling. His supervisor had reminded him to be authentic and show genuine respect, qualities that had earned him the posting. As the vessel prepared to dock, Julian steeled himself for the upcoming council presentation, unaware that his genuine nature would soon intersect with the Empress's quiet longing in a moment that would defy all protocols and begin cracking centuries of emotional suppression. Ambassador Julian Reyes adjusted his formal diplomatic attire one final time as he waited in the antechamber of the Grand Council chamber. The Elysian architecture surrounded him with soaring arches and living crystalline elements that pulsed with soft, harmonious light. Everything felt both magnificent and slightly overwhelming for a human visitor. His cultural advisor, a calm Elysian named Lyrian, had spent the previous days drilling him on proper protocols for the formal presentation. The precise angle of the respectful bow, the exact phrasing in the high formal dialect, the appropriate duration of eye contact, and most importantly, the subtle reading of ear positions and skin luminescence that conveyed true emotions beneath polite words. Julian had practiced until the movements felt almost natural, though nerves still fluttered in his stomach. This was not merely a ceremonial introduction, it was the moment when humanity would be officially acknowledged by the Dominion's highest governing body. The herald announced his name and credentials, the translation carrying smoothly through the vast space. Julian stepped forward with measured confidence, approaching the elevated platform where the imperial family and senior council members were seated. The retired emperor and empress observed with composed authority, their light patterns steady in shades of dignified blue. But it was Empress Aeloria who drew his full attention as he drew closer. She sat with regal poise, her tall frame draped in flowing garments that shimmered with embedded luminous threads. Her ear structures held the formal, neutral position, yet her eyes held a depth that suggested quiet intelligence mixed with something more, perhaps a trace of the same weariness he had glimpsed in other high-ranking Elysians, burdened by endless duty and suppressed feeling. Julian executed the traditional bow with careful precision, then delivered his prepared greeting in the formal style he had rehearsed so diligently. Honored leaders of the Elysian Dominion, I stand before you as representative of humanity, seeking bonds of mutual respect and beneficial cooperation between our peoples. I am grateful for this opportunity to serve as a bridge of understanding. His pronunciation was clear though accented, and he maintained the brief, respectful eye contact required by protocol, first with the retired emperor, then the empress, and finally with Empress Aeloria. When his gaze met hers directly, something unexpected happened. Her ear structures tilted forward sharply, in a position his advisor had described as indicating sudden, intense interest. Her skin patterns flared through a rapid sequence of soft golden and violet shifts that Julian could not fully interpret, but clearly signaled a strong emotional reaction, the kind Elysians were taught to dampen immediately. She held the eye contact a fraction longer than custom allowed, creating a brief but noticeable ripple of surprise through the assembled council. Before Julian could process the moment or wonder if he had committed some subtle error, Empress Aeloria spoke a single clear word that echoed through the silent hall. Yes. The chamber fell into absolute stillness. No one moved. Council members' light patterns dimmed in collective shock. Julian blinked, utterly confused because he had not posed any question. He had simply delivered the standard formal greeting. His advisor Lyrian looked visibly stunned, skin tones fading to a pale neutral, as if all emotion had momentarily shut down. The retired emperor stared at his daughter with an expression blending disbelief and alarm. Julian stood frozen, his mind racing to understand what had just occurred, and desperately hoping he had not accidentally triggered a diplomatic crisis on his very first major presentation. Empress Aeloria rose gracefully from her seat, her movements elegant, yet carrying an undercurrent of determination. Her skin patterns continued to shift through colors that suggested a mixture of embarrassment at her own impulsiveness and a surprising resolve, feelings she had rarely allowed to surface so openly. She addressed him directly, her voice steady despite the audible gasps from the council. "Ambassador Reyes, it appears I have just accepted your suit in a rather public manner. This was not entirely planned, yet I find I do not regret the impulse. Would you be open to beginning formal courtship proceedings?" The words hung in the air, transforming the entire atmosphere of the chamber. Julian's thoughts moved slowly at first, struggling to reconcile the individual words into a coherent reality. He had come to establish trade relations and cultural exchange, not to court anyone, least of all the ruling empress of an advanced interstellar dominion. He looked at her more carefully now, moving beyond the royal figure to the person beneath the ceremonial poise. He saw someone who appeared both certain and vulnerable, her ear structures trembling slightly despite her controlled bearing. In that instant, something instinctive guided his response. Drawing on the advice to remain authentic in unexpected situations, he replied with honest warmth. "Your Majesty, I am deeply honored by your words, though I must admit I am still processing what has just happened. I have no prior expectation of this moment, but if you are willing to explore this possibility, then yes, I would be genuinely pleased to begin courtship, even knowing I will likely make many cultural mistakes along the way. I promise to learn with sincerity and respect." His response, delivered with a touch of humble self-awareness, sent the council into a wave of murmured reactions, ranging from outrage to stunned fascination. The retired emperor immediately called for a recess, motioning sharply for both Aeloria and Julian to follow into the private consultation chambers. As they walked through the corridor, Julian felt the weight of what had just unfolded. His diplomatic mission had transformed in a single impulsive moment into something far more personal and infinitely more complex. Yet, looking at the Empress beside him, he could not deny a spark of genuine curiosity and attraction. For the first time since arriving, the rigid protocols of the Dominion felt less like barriers and more like an intriguing path worth exploring together. A path that might finally let suppressed emotions breathe. The private consultation chamber felt smaller than the grand hall, though its elegant crystalline walls still pulsed with soft, calming light. Empress Aeloria stood with composed grace, her ear structures tilted in a position of quiet determination, while her skin patterns shifted through subtle, warmer tones. The retired emperor paced slowly, his own luminescence displaying clear agitation in sharp crimson edges. The retired empress sat with rigid stillness, her gaze moving between her daughter and the human ambassador with analytical intensity. Julian Reyes remained near the entrance, trying to appear respectful and unobtrusive, while fully aware he had become the unexpected center of a royal crisis. Aeloria met her father's eyes steadily. "I cannot explain this with pure logic alone. For the first time in years of formal proposals, I felt something beyond strategic calculation. Ambassador Reyes looked at me and truly saw me, not merely the title or the political value I represent. In that single moment, I wanted to know him better, to feel without the constant suppression our traditions demand." Her voice carried quiet conviction, even as her patterns flickered with vulnerability. The retired empress interjected smoothly, her tone measured, yet firm. "Even if an initial attraction exists, a public declaration creates immediate complications. You could have requested a private audience later. Now the entire council has witnessed this, and if the courtship falters, it will affect the Dominion's dignity and our relations with humanity." Julian listened carefully, choosing his words with care. "Your Majesties, I understand the significance of what has occurred, and I did not arrive expecting anything of this nature. Refusing Her Majesty in that public setting would have caused its own diplomatic difficulties. More honestly, I find Empress Aeloria remarkable. In these first days, I have seen her strength and intelligence. If there exists a genuine possibility to build something meaningful while also strengthening ties between our peoples, I believe it is worth careful exploration." His response carried sincere respect without arrogance, acknowledging the weight of the situation while expressing openness. After a long silence filled with subtle pattern exchanges between the imperial parents, the retired emperor finally sighed. "Very well. The courtship may proceed under close observation. Ambassador Reyes, you will receive a dedicated cultural guide to ensure understanding of our traditions. The process will follow the established stages, each requiring successful completion before advancing. Either party may withdraw at any point without formal penalty, though the political implications will remain. These terms are acceptable?" Julian nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. I am grateful for the opportunity and will approach this with full respect and commitment to learning." The Emperor dismissed them with a gesture that conveyed both permission and warning. Aeloria and Julian stepped into one of the palace's serene garden courtyards, where soft bioluminescent flora created pockets of gentle privacy while remaining within public view. For the first time since the chamber, they spoke more openly. "I apologize for placing you in such a sudden and complicated position," Aeloria said, her ear structures showing slight regret. "It was not my intention to disrupt your diplomatic duties or create pressure." Julian offered a gentle smile. "You did not trap me, Your Majesty. If I had truly wished to decline, I could have found a diplomatic path, but I did not want to. This is unexpected and complex, yet also the most intriguing development I have encountered. I want to try if you do as well." Aeloria's patterns warmed further. "I want to try also, though I must warn you that Elysian courtship follows a structured path with clear stages and expectations. It is not the informal style common among humans." Julian chuckled softly. "I am beginning to realize every aspect of your culture involves thoughtful protocols, and I am willing to learn if you can be patient with my occasional missteps." Over the following weeks, they began navigating the initial stages of courtship. Their early meetings occurred in formal receiving rooms, with chaperones present, allowing conversation but maintaining proper distance. They spoke of art, philosophy, and the differences between human and Elysian societies. Julian asked questions out of genuine curiosity rather than strategy, wanting to understand how their long history had shaped their values and worldview, including the emotional restraint that now felt suffocating to Aeloria. Gradually, within the formal framework, genuine moments emerged. Julian's self-deprecating humor about his early cultural mistakes brought soft laughter from Aeloria, a sound that felt refreshing after years of measured courtly responses and suppressed joy. She shared quiet insights into her love for ancient stellar navigation, and he listened with sincere interest rather than polite obligation. External pressures began to surface as well. Conservative council factions whispered concerns about a human consort, weakening traditional lines of succession and introducing uncontrolled emotions that could destabilize their harmonious society. Some nobles questioned whether humanity possessed the refinement necessary for such a close alliance. Julian faced cautious messages from his own diplomatic superiors, who worried the personal entanglement might compromise his primary mission. Yet, through it all, both found themselves looking forward to their scheduled meetings, not out of duty, but because they genuinely enjoyed discovering each other beneath the layers of protocol and expectation. The garden pathways of the imperial palace offered slightly more privacy during the second stage of courtship, where chaperones remained at a respectful distance while allowing longer conversations under the soft glow of twin moons. Empress Aeloria and Ambassador Julian Reyes walked side by side, their steps measured according to tradition. Her ear structures had begun to show subtle relaxation in his presence, and her skin patterns occasionally flickered with warmer amber hues when he shared stories of human life. Julian had grown more adept at reading these cues, though he still relied on his cultural guide for finer nuances. The structured progression of their meetings created a safe framework for exploration, yet it also amplified the growing external tensions surrounding their unlikely pairing. Conservative factions within the council had begun to voice louder objections. During a recent session, several high-ranking nobles questioned the suitability of a human entering the imperial lineage, suggesting it risked diluting the Dominion's ancient heritage and unleashing emotional volatility. Rumors circulated that Julian was using charm to advance human interests rather than forming a sincere bond. Aeloria faced quiet pressure from advisors, warning that continued pursuit of this match could encourage rival claims to succession or weaken her authority when the time came to rule fully. Julian, for his part, received measured communications from Earth's diplomatic corps, expressing concern that personal involvement might cloud his judgment on trade negotiations and resource agreements. Despite these challenges, the couple found ways to create meaningful connection within the boundaries of protocol. One evening, as they paused beside a flowing crystal fountain, Aeloria spoke more openly than before. "I have spent years evaluating matches based solely on political advantage and lineage compatibility. Each suitor arrived perfectly prepared, yet none made me feel truly seen. You arrived with honest curiosity instead of calculated expertise, and that difference matters more than I expected. It awakens feelings our people have long kept buried." Julian nodded thoughtfully, his voice warm. "I came here to build bridges between our peoples, not to court royalty. But when you spoke that single word in the council chamber, I saw courage and authenticity that stood out against all the formality. I want to keep learning about you, not the Empress, but the person who loves mapping forgotten star routes and finds peace in quiet gardens." Their conversations deepened gradually. Julian described the vibrant chaos of human cities, the spontaneity of unplanned gatherings, and the way emotions were often expressed openly rather than through controlled patterns. Aeloria listened with genuine fascination, occasionally sharing how Elysian society valued harmony and long-term stability above individual impulse, a stability that had come at the cost of true feeling. They discovered shared traits beneath the differences. Both valued intellectual honesty. Both carried quiet frustrations with rigid expectations, and both possessed a dry wit that surfaced in unexpected moments. Julian's gentle teasing about his own protocol blunders never failed to draw a soft laugh from her, while her insightful observations about human adaptability brought him fresh perspective. As the third stage approached, allowing briefer periods of less supervised interaction, the political opposition intensified. A formal council review was scheduled, where Julian would face direct questioning from the assembled nobles. The anticipation created new strain. Aeloria confided her worries during one of their walks. "I fear this process is becoming heavier than I anticipated. Facing constant scrutiny and doubt wears on the spirit, even when the moments we share feel right." Julian paused, meeting her gaze with sincerity. "We can slow down or step back if the pressure grows too great. I would never want our connection to bring you more pain than joy." She considered his words, her patterns shifting through thoughtful blues and greens. "Do you wish to stop?" "No," he replied quietly. "I want to continue because what we are building feels genuine and worth the effort, but only if you feel the same." Aeloria reached out, her fingers lightly brushing his in a gesture permitted at this stage of courtship. The contact carried quiet significance. "I want to continue as well. Despite the difficulties, these conversations and shared moments have brought a lightness I had almost forgotten existed. We have already begun to challenge old assumptions simply by showing that understanding can grow across such different worlds, and that suppressed emotions can bloom again." They stood together as the moons rose higher, their hands remaining linked for a few moments longer than strictly necessary. The decision to proceed strengthened their resolve, even as they knew the upcoming council interrogation would test the sincerity of their budding bond. Julian prepared diligently with his advisor, determined to answer every question with honesty rather than polished diplomacy. Aeloria, meanwhile, found herself reflecting on how one impulsive word had opened a path she had long yearned for but never expected to find. The Grand Council Hall felt heavier with anticipation as Ambassador Julian Reyes stood before the assembled nobles for the formal review. Rows of high-ranking Elysians observed him with varying degrees of skepticism, their skin patterns displaying cool tones of scrutiny. Empress Aeloria sat at the imperial dais, her posture regal yet her ear structures betraying subtle tension. This stage of courtship required Julian to answer pointed questions about his background, his understanding of Elysian customs, and his true intentions toward the Empress. Many queries carried thinly veiled hostility, challenging whether a human could ever be suitable as a potential consort, given differences in species, culture, and status. A senior counselor spoke first, his voice measured. "Ambassador, explain how you, as a representative of a younger civilization, believe you could honor the responsibilities that come with closeness to the imperial line." Julian replied with calm honesty, "I am human, and I will never possess the instinctive depth of someone raised entirely within your traditions. However, I approach your culture with deep respect and a commitment to continuous learning. What I offer is genuine interest in who Empress Aeloria is as an individual, her thoughtful nature, her curiosity about the stars, and her strength in carrying heavy expectations. I care for her not because of her title, but because of the person she reveals in quiet conversation, and perhaps because humanity's open emotions can remind even the most controlled society what it feels like to truly live." Other nobles pressed further, questioning his motivations and suggesting he might seek influence through this connection. Julian addressed each concern directly, refusing to exaggerate his qualifications. "I came to build cooperative relations between our peoples through trade and cultural exchange. This courtship was entirely unexpected, yet it has become meaningful. If the Council finds my sincerity insufficient, I will respect that judgment, but I will not pretend to be more than I am." His words, delivered without defensiveness, created a noticeable shift in the room. Some patterns softened slightly, acknowledging the authenticity in his responses. Then Aeloria rose to speak, her voice carrying quiet authority. "For years, I have evaluated suitors deemed perfect by every traditional measure. Each one saw me primarily as a political asset or a means to strengthen alliances. Ambassador Reyes sees beyond that. He listens with real curiosity. He brings warmth and honesty that has made me feel valued as a person rather than a position. If this council values maintaining old prejudices over the possibility of genuine partnership and personal happiness, then perhaps our priorities deserve honest re-examination, including the emotional suppression that has kept us stable but distant." Her defense, delivered with controlled passion, swayed enough members to grant conditional approval. The courtship could continue, though under increased observation, and with the requirement to complete all remaining stages successfully. After the tense session, Aeloria and Julian found a brief private moment in a secluded garden courtyard. Exhaustion showed in both their expressions, yet relief also lingered. "That was more difficult than I expected," Aeloria admitted, her patterns shifting through reflective shades. "Facing such constant opposition drains the spirit." Julian nodded, his voice gentle. "We can still choose to pause. It would be politically awkward, but far less complicated than moving forward under this pressure." She looked at him steadily. "Do you wish to stop?" "No," he answered without hesitation. "I want to keep going because what we are creating feels real and valuable, but only if continuing brings you more happiness than burden." Aeloria's ear structures tilted in quiet affection as she reached for his hand, the gesture now permitted and carrying deeper meaning. "I want to continue too. Despite the challenges, these moments with you have reminded me that connection can exist beyond duty. We have already begun changing perspectives simply by showing it is possible, and that feeling freely might not destroy us, but strengthen us." They stood together as soft evening light filtered through the crystalline leaves, hands linked in mutual commitment. The decision strengthened their bond, even as new obstacles loomed on the horizon. 6 months into the courtship, the relationship had grown from careful exploration into something solid and cherished. They had completed the formal stages, earning greater privacy for deeper conversations. Julian had become remarkably skilled at reading Aeloria's ear positions and subtle pattern shifts, understanding her emotions in ways that felt intimate. Aeloria had come to appreciate his open emotional expression and spontaneous warmth, finding it a refreshing contrast to lifelong formality and suppression. They laughed together more freely now, sharing stories that bridged their worlds and discovering how their differences complemented each other. Yet fears remained. In a quiet garden pavilion one evening, they spoke with complete honesty. Aeloria voiced her concerns first. "I worry about the lasting political cost. Many nobles will never fully accept a human consort. There may be ongoing challenges to my authority and complications for any future succession. Julian shared his own doubts. I fear becoming a liability rather than a true partner. I have learned much, but I will always be the outsider who occasionally misses nuances. I do not want my presence to create more problems than my support can solve. They sat in thoughtful silence for a moment. Then Aeloria took his hand again. Yet look at what we have already built. We have shown that understanding and affection can cross vast differences. Our connection has already softened some opposition and opened minds on both sides. Julian smiled softly. And we have proven that personal happiness has value alongside duty. That alone is meaningful progress. After careful reflection, they reached the same conclusion. They would proceed toward formal bonding, accepting the risks because the partnership they shared felt worth every challenge. The preparations for the formal bonding ceremony transformed the palace into a place of both celebration and heightened tension. Representatives from multiple worlds, including a delegation from Earth, arrived to witness the historic union that blended Elysian tradition with select human customs. The grand hall where the courtship had begun was adorned with flowing banners of luminous silk and arrangements of earth flowers placed alongside native crystalline blooms. Music wove together Elysian harmonic tones with subtle human melodies, creating an atmosphere that felt both familiar and new. Aeloria and Julian stood together before the officiants, their attire combining Elysian elegance with thoughtful human elements, symbolizing the bridge they had chosen to build. Aeloria spoke her vows first, in the formal Elysian style, her voice clear and steady. I choose Julian Reyes as my bonded partner and equal. I commit to sharing the wisdom of our people while learning from his perspective. I will support him as he supports me, respect him as he respects me, and cherish the connection we have nurtured through patience and understanding. Julian responded with the direct warmth characteristic of his kind. I choose Aeloria as my wife and partner. I promise to honor your traditions while offering the openness and care of my own world. I will stand beside you in every duty and every joy, seeing you always as the remarkable person who first surprised us all with a single word of courage. Together, we will face whatever comes, because facing it with you is far better than facing anything alone. When the officiants declared them formally bonded, the hall filled with a mixture of applause, murmurs, and respectful silence from those still uncertain. For Aeloria and Julian, the external reactions faded into the background. In that moment, they saw only each other, their shared joy transcending the political complexities that surrounded them. The following months tested their commitment in new ways. They navigated questions of residence, balancing time between the palace and occasional visits to human territories. Julian took on the role of cultural liaison, helping both sides understand each other more deeply through patient dialogue. Aeloria used her position to advocate for greater flexibility in interspecies relations, showing through their example that genuine partnership could strengthen rather than weaken the dominion. 3 years after the bonding, they welcomed twins made possible through careful medical collaboration between Elysian and human scientists. The children carried blended traits that delighted and surprised everyone. Soft human features combined with delicate Elysian ear structures and faint luminescent patterns that shifted gently with their emotions. Their arrival became a living symbol of what was possible when different worlds chose connection over separation, and when suppressed feelings were finally allowed to shine. 5 years after that impulsive moment in the council chamber, Aeloria and Julian stood together during a quiet anniversary gathering. The celebration had drawn guests from many systems, some still skeptical, others genuinely inspired by the progress their union represented. In a private moment away from the gathering, Julian asked the question that had lingered in his mind since the beginning. What made you say yes that day? I have never fully understood what you saw in that single glance. Aeloria considered the question, her patterns glowing with thoughtful affection. I had spent years measuring every suitor by logic and tradition, and none felt right. Then I saw you, honest in your uncertainty, curious without pretense, looking at me as a person rather than a prize. My instincts recognized something my careful planning never had. Saying yes before overthinking felt like the first truly free choice I had made in a long time, the first time I let myself feel without fear of disruption. Julian smiled, drawing her closer. I am grateful your instinct spoke louder than caution that day. Building this life with you has been more work than either of us imagined, yet every challenge has made what we share even stronger. Aeloria nodded, her ear structures tilting in warm agreement. It has been complicated, yes, but worth every difficulty. Easy paths rarely create anything remarkable. We have built something genuine precisely because we worked for it together, learning to bridge our differences with patience, respect, and care. That effort has given us a partnership and a family that enriches both our worlds, and perhaps begins to heal what our people long suppressed. Their children, now energetic toddlers, ran over demanding attention with delighted laughter. Aeloria and Julian lifted them gently, returning to the gathering where their story continued to spark quiet conversations about possibility and courage. Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the little ones slept peacefully, the couple stood on a balcony overlooking the glowing capital. They watched the twin moons rise together, hands linked in comfortable silence. In the years ahead, they would continue facing challenges and celebrating victories, always grounded in the simple truth that began with one unexpected word. Sometimes, the most meaningful connections start when someone chooses to follow their heart instead of tradition alone. Their story remained an ongoing reminder that understanding and affection could grow across any distance when two people commit to the journey with open minds and genuine care, reawakening emotions that had been hidden for far too long. If you have enjoyed this tale of courage, connection, and bridges built between worlds, consider supporting more stories like it by following HFY Soundscape for fresh narratives that explore what happens when humanity meets the unknown with heart and honesty.